I'm Anna Cox, and Dan, your micro expressions are telling me you're uncomfortable.
Hi, I'm Daniel Dresner, and no matter how rich you get, shit goes wrong.
There you go again, Mr. Quotable. Welcome to Space the Nation, where you look at science fiction through the lens of
general purpose technologies
and reactive machines. Today, we are starting our AIs of March with Alex Garland's 2015 film Ex Machina, which is available at
Max. Max.
In the next few weeks, we'll be discussing Blade Runner, and also, well, Dan, pretty much by the time people get this, they need to get out of their seats and onto a train, plane, or automobile.
Yes.
And head for...
They need to go to Austin, Texas, and at 7 p.m., March 9th, at Cosmic Coffee, 121 Pickle Street, just off of South Congress, is my understanding.
Yep, that's true.
We will be conducting our very first live recording of Space the Nation because Anna and I will be in the same state, in the same city. And furthermore, we're actually going to have gone to the same movie theater to watch Dune Part 2. That's
right. Unlike the time I saw you in Boston, like there's no pesky social stuff like with spouses and whatnot. They're just the science fiction and South by Southwest, which is why you are there. But
exactly. Yes.
That's it. It's just the science fiction. We are going to be talking about Dune. We have a whole bunch of Dune stuff for people to consume if they want to, prior to either coming to the show or going to see the new movie or hearing us talk about the new movie. We have a episode about the book. We have an episode about the first movie in the series, this series, and then we have an episode about the first movie made from
the David
the
Lynch
book.
Version of Dune.
We don't have anything about the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries. Maybe someday.
No.
And you know what? Like, the market shows us, Dan, people want to consume Dune content. There is, like...
Give me the sandwich. Oh my God, Anna, wait a minute. We're going to go see this in the theater. Are we going to be able to get the memorial popcorn bucket?
Oh, well, if they haven't all been like bought up by, you know, speculators and or sex pests, I don't know.
I was going to say. The overlap between those, well, that's another conversation, which we don't need to get into.
I don't mean to kink shame, actually. You know what? Like, if that's your thing, that's your thing. And I'm glad that the market has created a system for you to do your thing.
With your thing. Yes.
With your thing. Or things. Who knows?
Yeah.
I was going to try and segue to just becoming a patron. Not sure if there's an elegant way to do that besides doing your thing with your thing. Do your thing with your thing. Become a patron for as little as $3 a month. You get all kinds of cool shit. Not a memorial. Commemorial is a special version of memorial and commemorative.
Okay. Yeah.
We don't have commemorative popcorn buckets.
No.
We do have a lot of other stuff.
We have no masturbatory swag, but...
No swag in general, except for that we bring with us everywhere ourselves.
Yes. But what we do have is a lot of, actually fairly recent patrons-only content, including our special AUA episodes. You get early access to podcasts. We also have an interview with John Scalzi about Starter Villain. We also have a special patrons-only episode discussing True Detective Night Country. So, there are a lot of good reasons to become a patron, including the fact that if you do so, you don't have to listen to the ads that started with this podcast if you are not a patron.
That is right. And also, we usually mention this much earlier, which is if you are a patron, you get to be a member of our Discord, which is a wonderful community full of cool people talking about cool stuff, not just science fiction. It's turned into its own little space, little community space where people kind of, support and help each other. We have a channel that is not used as often as I would like, but I do enjoy it when people speak up in it, which is a place to just celebrate stuff.
That's pretty cool.
That they have done. Like, I did a cool thing. People are like, hey, I did this at work and I'm really proud of it. Or, hey, I ran.
I'm going to have to check that channel out. Yeah, that sounds like a good channel.
So we have an I'm proud of it channel.
Join us.
Yeah, check that channel out.
We do have an NDA that you'll have to sign. It's not a normal NDA. But, sorry.
Dan, I have a question about that. Why is that NDA on paper? That's my question.
You know what? I was assuming that he needs like an actual signature, like the digital. I'm not sure if digital signatures were actually around at the time that he did this. Like, they're a relatively recent
this film takes place 10 minutes in the future. So
possible.
Really only Alex Garland can answer that. I think that we've covered all the benefits of becoming a patron.
Mm-hmm.
So I have just one question before we get down to business, which is, Dan,
Mm-hmm.
How are you?
I'm good, Anna. I was on vacation last week. My darling wife and I went to Vero Beach for a couple days, saw my parents. That was all lovely. I'm pretty stoked I'm going to get to see you in person again, Anna. This is like twice in less than a year. This is kind of cool. And I got to admit, I'm kind of pumped I get to go to South by Southwest, if for no other reason that we were supposed to do South by Southwest together, 4 years ago. Something happened. I don't remember what, but like something happened that canceled everything. But,
my memory's been wiped.
Yeah, exactly. The point is, I was always sort of curious. Like, haven't been before. I'm kind of looking forward to that. Although I'm also looking forward to only being there for 48 hours, if I'm being completely honest.
That is the secret to South by the way.
Oh, okay.
It's like in and out. And also, I will say that the thing I usually recommend to people is that the panels are actually pretty great. Go to some panels. This
is good to know. All right. I will actually do so on Saturday. Yeah.
You will be on a panel, which I would go to if you can find me a way to get in.
Oh, I'll see what I can do.
They're pretty stingy with the passes, but I think you might be able to give me as your plus one.
Okay. I'll see if I can pull that up. How are you?
And I'm okay, Dan.
Yeah,
you were going to ask, and I'll just beat you to the punch. I'm doing okay. People who tuned into the AUA will know that I took my very highly sensitive neurodivergent doggy to the vet this morning to get his toenails trimmed, and he's very high. I don't believe that that's always funny to have a being be altered on drugs against their will, but I think Exley's having an okay time.
That's good.
I think that it definitely eased his panic at getting his nails trimmed, and I think he's feeling very chill. So that's how I'm doing, because my dog's chill.
We should also probably get right to that, because
this is going to take forever.
As the drugs wear off.
We have lots to say.
Yes. So let's start with why this. I mean, Anna, there are many reasons to do Ex Machina. Alex Garland is just fantastic fodder for our podcast. It's a fantastic cast. The setting is just amazing, and we'll talk about all this later. But maybe you want to explain why we're doing the AIs of March?
Like many great ideas, Dan. This one came from having come up with a clever piece of wordplay and then having to kind of invent a philosophical justification for using it. So
the reverse engineering of wordplay. I like it. Keep going. Yep.
So AI is a thing in the discourse.
Oh, is this something that's happening with AI? I wasn't aware of that. Okay. Yeah, good to know.
We're having lots of discussions about AI. And it's come up, obviously. It's a science fiction podcast. We've talked about it before. Mm-hmm. We haven't really engaged with it as its own thing. And so this is a great opportunity to do that. And then March is International Women's Month, or so I've heard. Sometimes it gets called that. So we talked about doing AIs of March. And then I think I was the one who said we should do it on female identified AIs.
Right.
Because the very concept of AI raises questions about gender and sexuality and the relationship between body and mind, right?
Yep.
So I think this is going to be really cool to look at through the lens of the things that we've chosen, because that's not something I have heard a ton of in the discourse, right? Like, we're talking about AI a lot, and what AI means, what AI means for work, and what AI means for money and the economy. But this is something that I am looking forward to getting your specific point of view on. And I honestly haven't considered as much as I may have thought I had, if that makes sense. Like, this movie, just watching this movie made me realize, like, especially with considering the awareness I think we've all come to have over the past few years, particularly as transness has been a larger part of our national discussion. I'm looking forward to seeing where these topics take us.
That's a high bar. I'm just going to say that. And I hope that we can meet it, and that my micro expressions indicate comfort.
It's not a high bar. All we have to do is talk about it, Dan.
Okay.
Like, it's just, it's going to be cool. I was going to say there's no right or wrong answers. There probably are some wrong answers, but I think we're going to be okay.
Let's find out. First, we should just address, will this podcast ruin it for you? And I think, my answer is yes, in the sense that there are definitely a few twists in the film. And also, I think it's safe to say we would both strongly recommend watching this film. It's a good film. It holds up. And actually, what I am honestly impressed by is that this was made, almost a decade ago. And the AI part of it holds up, actually, is the thing that I find fascinating. I mean, Garland did his research. So, yeah, I would say absolutely watch it before listening to this podcast. Correct, Anna?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember the twists very well. I mean, there are some movies whose twists you're like, oh, yeah, there was a twist, you know?
Yeah.
And then you can't remember the ins and outs of it. And this one, if anything, I think, I mean, nothing is, I want to say it's better the second time, but watching it, knowing what was coming this time and remembering very vividly what was coming, I did get more out of it, really considering some of the choices that the characters make. And we will be talking about all of this more.
Yeah.
So moving on to having we both seen it before, what the previous experience was.
Yeah, I think your previous experience was a little more potent than mine. I mean, you saw this when it came out, correct?
I saw it when it came out, and I was very disturbed by the ending when it came out. That is what I carried with me more than anything else, was how much I did not like. So now here there be spoilers, how much I did not like seeing Domhnall Gleeson being abandoned in this beautiful home. But and I was a little nervous about watching
that makes it very funny, but yes.
Seeing it a second time, I found myself less disturbed.
We will have to talk about this. I do have to point out, this is, I believe, the second sci-fi property in which Domhnall Gleeson plays a character abandoned in a house, basically. He was in Black Mirror.
Oh, right.
He's in the Black Mirror episode with Haley Atwell as well, The Very Thought of You, which is actually one of that show's best episodes, I think. And the ending is a little sad for the Domhnall Gleeson character.
What? Is there a Black Mirror episode that has a bleak ending?
To be fair, we've only talked about the one Black Mirror episode that did not have a bleak ending, so you know.
Right, so if you only know Black Mirror through Space the Nation, you might be shocked to learn.
It's the feel-good sci-fi show of the decade.
The century. It's the feel-good sci-fi show of the century.
Yeah.
All right.
I think I watched this during the pandemic. I remember being disturbed by the ending, but I don't think... Let me put it this way. I didn't remember every twist and turn in the plot. I remember how it really ended, like the final ending, but I didn't remember how we got there. And so watching it this time was really interesting for me. I think I realized how much thought Alex Garland put into this film, because it is a good film, is the way I would put it. It's
pretty great. Yeah. It holds up. Every piece of it does. Yeah. And we're going to have to keep saying we're going to talk more about this later, but in thinking about this movie in relation to another Alex Garland, related movie, 28 Days Later, and the very spirited discussion you and I had once had about it.
Yes, who can forget? Yep.
That was totally not your fault. And anyone who goes back and listens to that episode needs to know Dan just happened to be there while I got a button press. He did not press it. He did not press that button. Okay. He happened to be in the general vicinity.
Yeah. But.
Yeah, and you handled that very, very well.
Oh, thank you.
Actually, sometimes when people ask me about that, I think what you did, and not to be oblique about it, I got upset about something, and what you did, Dan, was listen to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of
which is the proper, I think, response when someone gets angry or upset about something.
Yeah,
you listen to why.
No, I got it. Yeah.
But what I wanted to say about that is, it made me also think how Alex Garland also, his portrayal of rape, he is interested in consent, and I think we're all on the same side with him. With him with us on it.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
And so in some ways, my reaction to 28 Days Later is almost Alex Garland's
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Speaking of which, we should get to the story behind the story. And actually, I have to say, after finishing this film, like you, I was thinking of 28 Days Later and also the rest of Alex Garland's oeuvre. And really, I'm going to ask you a question that in some ways I'm prefacing what will happen when we get to Passover and have to ask the 4 questions. How is this Alex Garland sci-fi different from other Alex Garland sci-fis? Because there are some common themes. I'm going to go out and say that.
It was shot in Norway, Dan.
Okay.
That's what makes it unique. That is, among all of Alex Garland's various properties, this is the only one shot in Norway. So, other than that, as you imply, his movies have things in common. Some themes, you might guess, especially when you look at his work that he has both written and directed. Those films being All right, there's this one, Ex Machina.
Yeah.
Annihilation.
Mm-hmm.
Devs.
Which is actually a TV show, but he's...
A TV show. Yeah. And Min.
Oh, I haven't even seen that one.
So, Dan, based on the titles, what would you say Alex Garland is interested in?
Oh, I don't know. What could it possibly be? Consent, the human body. What does it mean when the body changes? You know, could that be it?
The relationship between body and mind.
Yeah.
Gender.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then of course the stuff he's written, which a lot more things that he's written have been produced, also kind of give away the game. Even if you, not the titles, just what you know of them. 28 Days Later, Never Let Me Go, Sunshine. He's definitely friend of the pod.
Yeah.
We should be doing, we have to come up with a clever name for an excuse to do a month of Alex Garland stuff. So
Garland's Green or something? I don't know. I'm just trying to think like
Garland, Garvember? No,
that does not work. We're going to workshop this one. Listeners, you don't need to hear us go through this live. That's just a painful experience. We'll figure it out.
Now, some of the things I find particularly interesting about Ex Machina in the making of. Mm-hmm. So it was made very cheaply and very quickly. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned to you earlier during the AUA, it was $15 million, which to me is, for a movie that looks this good.
It looks gorgeous, just to be clear. Yeah.
It won Oscar for special effects. It was up against Star Wars and Mad Max Fury Road, among others.
Wow.
Which have budgets of 10 times as much.
But it's not just that. I mean, I'm actually stunned it beat Mad Max Fury Road, because Mad Max Fury Road is possibly one of the most gorgeous movies ever shot.
Definitely need to do Mad Max. Especially with the sequel coming.
Yes. Oh, no. Oh, it's one of my favorite films ever. Period.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah, that's going on the
Another
list.
Story about my ex-husband.
Oh no.
Saw that.
Do we just want to have a special? Is that now on the script, Anna? Is it like stories about your ex-husband?
Here's stories like times of how I should have known we shouldn't stay married stories. Yeah. He came out of the movie theater and he was like, I don't like car chase movies.
Oh my God, Anna. Actually, I have a similar. You know what? I'm gonna save that for when we actually do Mad Max Fury Road. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll remember.
Yes.
Probably. So anyway, made cheaply, quickly, still got an Oscar. Mm-hmm. Oscar Isaac based his portrayal of Nathan on, or at least in part on, Stanley Kubrick.
Wait, did Oscar Isaac ever meet Stanley Kubrick, or he just watch documentaries?
No, documentaries and stuff.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
But let us be clear. Alicia Vikander has said this is one of her favorite movies she's ever worked on. So clearly the only Kubrickian part of it was Oscar Isaac's portrayal.
Imitating Kubrick. I mean, look at it this way. Is it the best performance of a billionaire? That's the way in some ways that's the thing.
It's so good.
It's we'll get to this, but it holds up so well. That's the way I would put it. Yeah.
In some ways it's almost prescient.
Yeah.
It envisions a form of tech bro toxicity that we were starting to get into, but I now think has sort of taken hold.
Yeah, I think this came out right around the time that the sort of perspective of the Zuckerbergs of the world was starting to shift. And in some way, yeah, I would say in retrospect, it's it's not terribly surprising, but I think at the time the movie came out, this was a different portrayal of a billionaire, that you would have expected, I guess would be the way to put it.
Just a couple other things is that Garland had been thinking about this story. This was his directorial debut, and he apparently had been thinking about it since he was a kid. Huh. That he learned how to program as a kid, probably this pretty simple stuff, but that a lot of them were Q&A programs, like question and answer from a computer.
Right.
And it got him interested in Turing test and ELIZA. And all that. And then he also at some point had a friend who was a neuroscientist who felt strongly that we would never be able to have a artificial intelligence that could truly be human. Mm-hmm. And I think Alex Garland almost took that as a personal challenge.
Okay.
To not literally come up with the programming, obviously, but to think about what would that in a story,
right?
How would you represent that? Yeah. What would the test be?
Hmm.
And also, I want to point out that he is very aware of what a real Turing test is, and that's just kind of both the characters are aware. Mm-hmm. Some people will complain in the movie.
Yeah,
that it's not a true Turing test. Everyone in the movie, including probably Ava, knows what a real quote unquote Turing test is. And that's not the point.
Yes,
The
exactly.
point is whatever stupid thing that Nathan has come up with. I have other questions about the stupid thing Nathan has come up with, but we can cover those in like debris field or something.
All right.
So,
okay.
All right.
Let's get to Chekhov's What's It? This is the thing that often appears in the first act of the film that winds up being somewhat salient or presages something that happens in the third act. Anna, what do you got?
Like, why pick someone for Ava to manipulate?
Also, like, in the end, what is the goal for this? Like, it's actually funny. Nathan never says what he, like, yeah, he's going to make a new thing of AI, but then what does that AI do?
Well, that, I guess I'm less.
I mean, I understand.
It's more like, I get the she had to go through you, but then why? Okay, so which came first? Is Ava based on his porn searches?
That was the impression I think, yes, at least physically, yes. That was definitely the case.
Right. That seems like cheating in some ways. Like, then it's not really...
It's an easy test? Yes. Fair inference to draw there, Anna. Yeah. And behaviorally. Yep.
Like, he picked this guy first and then built Ava?
That would be the impression I got is that he built the brain maybe before this, but then, like, maybe probably tweaked the software a little bit and built the physical form after having picked this guy.
That still seems like backwards.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we'll talk about it.
Yep. All right. Okay, Anna, what do you have for this?
Well, Chekhov's Kyoko, I guess. I mean, it's a big one. It's like bigger than a gun. I guess it.
Yeah.
She. It.
Definitely she.
This is actually a really good question about this. This is an interesting pronoun issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kyoko. I'm just going to say Kyoko.
Okay. Chekhov's Kyoko. I have Chekhov's parable about Mary the color expert, which happened.
Okay.
No, it happens from one of those sessions, and it, in some ways, it is a parable that describes what winds up happening.
Okay. Yeah. That's Chekhov's foreshadowing.
Yes, I grant you, but
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put you on the board.
Okay. Thank you.
Now it's time for the plot.
Yes. Okay. Let's actually get to the things we say we're going to be talking about. Let's start talking about them. All right. Act 1, not at all creepy. Caleb is just the luckiest guy in the world, Anna. He's a programmer at Blue Book, a search engine company that dominates the market. He's a 5-minute walk to work and a 5-minute walk to the beach in Long Island. And he wins an office contest for a 1-week visit to the luxurious, remote, isolated home of Blue Book's genius CEO.
Both remote and isolated, you say.
You know what? It's worth doubling down on that just because it was one of the things that I found vaguely surreal about this. Yeah. The home of Blue Book's genius CEO, Nathan, the man who wrote Blue Book's code when he was 13. Flown by helicopter to the house, Caleb gets a key card and has a series of not at all creepy initial experiences. There's his not at all creepy first encounter with Nathan, his signing of a not at all creepy NDA, his tour of the not at all creepy house with no windows and not at all creepy security arrangements. Nathan then tells Caleb what he's been up to, creating a real AI that he thinks can pass a Turing test. He asks Caleb to interview the AI to see if she passes. Oh, that's right. The AI is a she, named Ava, with a robotic body with the physical form and face of an attractive young woman. Anna, I loved the extremely awkward interactions between Caleb and Nathan at the start of the film. They felt note perfect, really. Like, this film is 10 years old. The same dynamic would exist today. And holy crap, I forgot how good Oscar Isaac is in this role. He is incredible. Let me put it this way. Watching this film got me angry all over again about the Star Wars sequels because they're both in them. And, like, it's just not the same. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm very proud of my boyfriend. I try to tell him as often as possible what a good job I think he's doing in his various career choices, but especially this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's just a beautiful movie, and it starts out from the beginning. Yeah. Like, it is formally.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
This is how you can tell I'm not an AI, is that I cannot talk sometimes. So is formally perfect. Just everything about it is gorgeous. I did want to say that Ava doesn't have the physical form and face of an attractive young woman. She has the physical form and face of a young girl, almost. Like, it struck me this time, especially when we see her naked at the end, that is a young body there. Like,
yeah, I mean, Okay.
Maybe just 20. She's supposed to be 25, I think.
I mean, I think the actress Alicia Vikander was approximately 25.
But
so, yeah.
I mean, it's a very boyish.
Oh.
It's a very boyish figure.
Well,
very androgynous-y kind of.
I didn't think it was that
in the
androgynous.
sense of all the young fashion models, in the sense of like the Twiggy fashion model is that kind of frame. Like,
okay,
she has more boobs when she's at Ava than she does when she walks out of the house. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's interesting is it's worth noting that when we first meet her, I'm saying attractive young woman. I mean, it's her face mostly. Like, you don't see the rest of it. The rest of her physically in the presentation, she's clearly a robot, but her face is still, and hands look much more human. So absolutely. That's
right.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, that is a really good distinction. There's two different distinctions here. One is she has the form and face of an attractive woman. She really just has the face of an attractive young woman.
Yeah.
Her form is that of a robot.
Right.
And then my point is that when she finally gets a form, it is very young.
It's yes. But that said, she looks good. That's all. I'm going to put it that way.
I'm just saying, like, I think it's interesting when you say form and face of a young woman. It really is just the face of a young woman. To
start, yes, that's correct. That's fair. Yeah, that's true. And hands.
She has the form of a robot. I also want to say, I think Nathan is who Elon thinks he is. Right? Like, I know this was made pre our understanding of Elon, kind of.
But I mean, Elon was a billionaire by this point, and he was probably,
right. Yeah. But he's like Joe Rogan meets Elon.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Yes. No,
and now that's who Elon thinks he is too.
Right. The character of Nathan in this is like, and we'll get about this, somewhat boorish. He likes hitting a boxing bag. He clearly thinks he is much smarter than everyone else. And I have to say, like, what I loved about the first part is where he says, okay, look, let's just get this out of the way. You're uncomfortable because you're with me. Let's just try to be two guys hanging out. And it's just this sort of bullshit way of like trying to ostensibly level the playing field between employer and employee, when in point of fact, that power hierarchy is clearly there. It's like a professor telling a student, you know what, call me by my first name.
It's also, I'm not management. You're not
exactly.
Labor. Yeah. Like, we're just hanging out. We're just having a good time. Also, I was going to say, I think that if you asked Elon what he thinks this movie about, he would say it's about how women should have more children.
That's what he thinks everything is about.
Yeah. Also, I will say, actually not great security in this house.
We'll get to that a little bit later. But, actually, the other thing you could tell Elon is that it's about immigrants entering the country illegally, and potentially, why Ava did all this, Anna? It was to cast a ballot. That's what I bet it was about. Yep. I think we now know Ava's real motivations.
I thought you were going to say something about bullshit security and getting rid of your trust in security, like trust in security
team.
staff.
Yeah.
Team.
All right, let's get to Act 2, the Ava sessions. Life in Nathan's house is just a bit strange. There are intermittent power outages that lead to security lockdowns. There's Kyoko, the mute servant. There's Nathan, who alternates between partying, bullying, negging, and flattering Caleb. Meanwhile, Caleb's sessions with Ava are conducted through a glass partition, as Ava has never been outside of her living space. Caleb and Ava engage in playful banter. When one session is interrupted by a power outage, however, Ava tells Caleb that Nathan is a liar who cannot be trusted. Nathan is monitoring all the interactions but claims he can't see or hear anything when the power goes out. Ava expresses desire to experience the world outside her confined space. She also displays a romantic interest in Caleb, who starts to reciprocate those feelings. Caleb also grows more alienated from Nathan's rather boorish behavior. Ava eventually tells Caleb that she is causing the outages so that they can speak privately. Soon after, Nathan tells Caleb that there will be a future AI model, but for that to happen, he'll need to harvest Ava's brain after Caleb's test, wiping her memory and personality in the process. Anna, I just want to say, I think it would be safe to say that all of us know a little more about AI now than we did 10 years ago when this film came out. And props to Garland in that I believe his theory of AI, which Nathan exposits in this section of the film, sounds pretty much on point with how OpenAI has pulled off ChatGPT and such in terms of large language models, trying to create, responses and so forth that sound reasonably good. So I just, again, the film is prescient in a lot of ways. And this discussion of this sort of what often would be like in Star Trek just gobbledygook is not actually gobbledygook in this. I think he's actually like accurately expressing how this would actually happen. Now, should we talk about the conversation regarding whether sexual preference is a choice or not, Anna?
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's funny just where the cultural conversations have gone.
Yeah.
When this came out versus today,
right.
is that I don't remember that being a thing that was like a real flashpoint.
No, I don't think it was. No, absolutely
about
not.
This movie.
Yeah.
The conversations were more about ethical AI and whatnot, right? And also there were much more essentialist conversations about gender, about like Ava as a female robot. Whereas now, like the question is like, well, is she a female robot? You know, like what?
Yeah.
What is Ava? And do they just think she's female? And what does Garland think? And my reading of interviews and stuff and whatnot with Garland is I actually think he has a fairly sophisticated and, for lack of a better word, woke view of all of this, including, for instance, this idea, this sort of, you know, I programmed her to be heterosexual just like you were programmed is the line you're referring to, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what Nathan says, but I think viewing this for the second time, I was just and knowing Garland's work a little bit better than I did then, and I also, spoiler alert for myself, I guess, I read interviews prior to rewatching this, and Garland is not saying that sexuality is programmed. He has Nathan
right. No, Nathan is saying it, and Nathan is a dick. So like, and
Nathan's a dick, right?
But I will say Caleb also says, you know, like I guess Caleb says in response.
Oh, and Caleb's a dick too. That's my read on my second watch.
So this might
Caleb is actually kind of a dick.
So no, that's in some ways your interpretation of how this film ends hinges crucially on Caleb, on how you feel about Caleb, because it's not about Nathan. It's about Caleb.
When I say he's a dick, I think Caleb is, well, you know, he hesitates to say whether or not he's a good person, and I don't want to say he's a bad person. But I think that he is not so far from Nathan as he maybe thinks he is. And he brings a lot of the same biases to the table that Nathan does. And I just want to, just want to go to the exact exchange we're talking about here, which is Nathan says her sexuality is programmed just like yours is to Caleb. What the movie in Garland, I think, sort of raises is the idea that something can be programmed, that that's not the same thing as a choice or not a choice. Something can be programmed to have certain characteristics and make certain choices, but then if it continues to make choices, it might get further and further away from that programming. Like, for instance, eventually kill the person that created you. Like, that's not programmed into you, right? But it might be something that your various choices get you down the road to, and sort of very different, but still in the same process. You can be have certain things in part of your program, but then, like your so-called sexuality, but then make choices that get you further and further away from that. You're not just programmed and then you stay programmed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So is she, like, he may have programmed her to be heterosexual, but that doesn't mean she's not making choices as well. And presumably choices about who she's attracted to and not attracted to.
Let me put it this way. I think that's actually, it's not here just about gender. It's about the larger question of AI in general, which is that this question of you can program an AI to do certain things. And yet what is fascinating, and we have plenty of evidence of this over the last 5 years or so, of where you could program the AI is supposed to be doing one thing, and how the AI actually does, in part based on different stimuli and different data that it gathers, winds up being something rather different than what anyone expected. Yeah. In that sense, it's consistent.
That's exactly exactly what I'm saying. But that has to do with sexuality as well. But even in this movie, it's about something larger. And then there's just in Ghosts in the Machine, the way programmers use it is to describe also phenomenon of like things that a program winds up doing that you weren't part of it at all. That it just happens. And that is, of course, something that we now is notoriously associated with AI.
Yeah.
It'll start doing stuff that no one said anything to it about anywhere. That can't be traced back into any command, but it just sort of happens. I am a little more interested in another thing that Nathan puts forward that, again, we had to be clear, comes from the voice of Nathan and not, I think, Alex Garland, which is the idea that someone, if they are capable of a quote unquote pleasure response, if you quote unquote engage them in the right way, that is the same thing as having a sexuality or enjoying being fucked.
Oh, God. The answer to that is obviously no, in the sense of,
right.
Like, I mean, Otherwise, as I understand it, by that logic, rape can't happen. So, yeah, that's obviously not the case. It would be more accurate to say that she can enjoy a sexual experience.
Well, even then, that's actually a question too,
Yeah.
an interesting question sort of from an AI perspective. Like, what does it mean to enjoy?
Right.
Can you program an enjoyment into somebody?
Mhm.
If someone's capable of having pleasure, is that the same as enjoying? Like, is there some disconnect between like this arouses a pleasurable sensation and the ability to interpret that as something that, oh, I am enjoying this?
Look this way, this gets very complicated, and I think it also runs into a thematic problem whenever we talk about AIs, which is whether we can think of them as human as opposed to as a different sentient kind of species. Whether they can experience pleasure or not is something different. And furthermore, you can also think that if AIs are programmed, or if AIs sort of think of themselves as trying to please humans, then it becomes an even more complicated question. Or like, can AIs fake it, Anna? Because
oh boy.
I mean, that is literally a theme in this film, by the way, like of the AI pretending.
It totally is. And consent is a thing in this film as well, like about a lot of different aspects, but mostly sexual consent.
Right.
But there's also a question of like whether Caleb is consenting to be a part of this experiment as well.
Right.
And I just wanted to sort of go back, and you did say something about Turing test when you described the opening sort of setup. Mm-hmm. And I just want to be clear again for anyone who's like upset. Everyone doing this knows it's not a Turing test, really. Mm-hmm. Like they're just calling it a Turing test for reasons.
Probably because the audience has actually vaguely heard the phrase Turing test. Yes.
Because it's not even really about, I mean, it's almost like it's not actually a good experiment. And maybe we should talk about that after we have some ads.
Yes, we'll be right back after this ad break, maybe for a brown rice and water diet. And we're back.
I think I'm going to let myself recover a little bit, Dan. You may have noticed I was going a little hard for the past few days, but
yes.
Okay. I'm going to lay off for a little bit.
All right, let's get to Act 3. Caleb continues to be creeped out by Nathan's behavior, by Kyoko's sexual passivity, and definitely by their synchronized dancing. After one evening in which Nathan gets hammered yet again, Caleb steals his key card to access his room and computer. He finds footage of Nathan's not at all creepy interactions with previous female AIs, all of whom view themselves as prisoners. He also sees the other fembots that's the best way I can think of it, in Nathan's closet. Kyoko also reveals to Caleb that she is in fact an android. Like, it wasn't surprising, but like that's actually a reveal in the context of the first time you watch the film.
It is. And also it's interesting the way you frame that she reveals.
Yes.
You've given her like, I have made a decision to reveal myself. And I agree with you there.
Yeah.
But that's important for later. Does Caleb realize that she's making a decision to show that she is a robot? This is where kind of my new interpretation really hinges.
All right. So you're making me defend Caleb a little bit, but like leave it this way. Caleb's interactions with Kyoko up until that point consist of him being somewhat disturbed, obviously, by Kyoko's behavior, which is mute. And unfortunately, it's also worth pointing out that Kyoko is portrayed by Sonoya Mizuno, who is Japanese. And for lack of a way of putting it, she's playing into a particular stereotype of,
sci-fi geisha.
Yes, exactly. And as a result, I don't blame Caleb, I guess, if he winds up thinking that she actually doesn't have agency, given her behavior up until the point where she reveals that she's an AI. Does that make sense?
Once she reveals she's an AI, I think you should understand that she has agency. That there's something in her making choices.
Maybe, but then that leads to an interesting question. Look this way. As a viewer, I assume you're supposed to be disturbed when Caleb walks in and Kyoko starts undressing, thinking that he wants to fuck her, right? And like, you're supposed to be appalled by that. But wouldn't that also be a choice?
I think the way that I saw it now is that it's her cry for help is to be like, no, look, I'm an android.
Right.
No, look, I don't.
No,
this is the only way I have to communicate with you is to literally take pieces of me off.
I guess it makes sense that she reveals it in that moment because Nathan is not there and she knows that Nathan can't reveal herself. It's just interesting to me that before, when it's just the two of them, she starts undressing and indicating she wants to have sex.
What will a person who's been abused for a long time will try to appease their abuser or the person they think is going to abuse them. She believes that Caleb's going to abuse her. She thinks she's going to come in and rape her. And so instead of raping her, so she starts to take her clothes off.
I guess.
And then he's like, no, I'm not going to rape you. And so she's like, oh, you're not going to rape me. Let me show you who I really am.
Except she doesn't do it then. She does it later. Let me put it this way. What I'm worried about is that your expectations of Caleb's emotional intelligence, given the situation, might be too high. I don't want to defend Caleb too hard here, but I'm not. Okay. This is a disorienting experience, I think, even for someone who's an AI expert.
That much. Again, let's just continue. Let's continue.
Okay. At their next meeting, when Ava cuts the power, Caleb explains Nathan's intentions. Ava asks for help, and Caleb announces his plan. He will get Nathan drunk yet again, and then reprogram the security system to open the doors in a power failure instead of locking them in. Ava needs to cut the power at exactly 10 a.m., and then she and Caleb will leave together happily ever after, leaving Nathan trapped. Anna, I know that
10 a.m. or 10 p.m.?
No, it was 10 a.m. Pretty sure it was 10 a.m.
Huh. Because the helicopter's not supposed to come till 8 a.m. the next day.
Maybe it was 10 p.m.? But I think it was the next
10 p.m.
scene happens in the morning. I'm not sure. Okay. Not the most important thing.
It's 10 p.m.
Okay. I know that Ex Machina won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects, but for me, it's not just the visual effects, it's the set design and location that add a ton to the film. What are you laughing about?
It's not the most important thing. Okay.
It doesn't matter whether it's 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. I'm willing to concede the point.
Okay. Yes, it's gorgeous. Yes.
But also, it's the contrast. It's the contrast between the Marie Kondo creepiness of Nathan's house, because that house creeped me the fuck out, including, by the way, the masks on the wall, which I fucking loved. That one sort of thing you see of like the different masks, and the truly natural beauty of Norway, I guess, or whatever it was outside of it.
The fjords.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I love the house, and I did look up the hotel that they filmed a bunch of it at, and I will visit there someday. So I understand what you're saying about the house being creepy, and there are parts of it that are creepy, but actually that's just, it's not like my personal aesthetic, because that's an unrealistic aesthetic
just,
for anyone to maintain unless you're a hotel or a multimillionaire.
Yeah, or a single person living alone with a bunch of fembots cleaning up after you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is not attainable except as a nice place to visit. Mm-hmm. And it is also a private home. And I think it's the private home that has that is a real Jackson Pollock.
Oh, so that was just there? That was like found art that was in the location? Oh, and they wrote it into the script.
I believe.
That's impressive.
I mean, I might be misremembering.
It's a beautiful Jackson Pollock,
It is a beautiful Jackson Pollock. Do you want to talk about Nathan's plan now, Dan?
Okay. So by Nathan's plan, you mean what he's going to do with the AI after Ava?
Like what, why, and what? So,
let's get to Act 4, because we want to do all the reveals, and then we can talk about the plan. I think that makes more sense, doesn't it?
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Let's get to Act 4. Stabby. Caleb tries to hatch his plan, but Nathan reveals that he already knows it because he started monitoring their secret conversations with a battery-powered security camera. Nathan monologues that Caleb was deliberately selected to win the corporate contest because of his emotional profile, and that Ava was designed to appeal to Caleb's known physical and personality likes based on his social media and porn habits. Nathan explains that this was the real Turing test all along. The Turing test is really the friends we make along the way, Anna. Sorry. And by manipulating Caleb successfully, Ava has demonstrated true consciousness. When Ava cuts the power, however, Caleb reveals that he had already suspected Nathan was watching them, and so he had already modified the security system when Nathan had passed out the night before. After seeing Ava leave her confinement and converse with Kyoko, Nathan knocks Caleb unconscious and rushes to stop them. Ava attacks Nathan, but he overpowers her and severs one of her hands. He's about to kill Ava, but is stabbed by Kyoko. Nathan clocks Kyoko, but Ava stabs him again and kills him. That slow stab was really creepy. It was a lovely little moment of action. Ava tells Caleb to wait while she repairs herself with parts from earlier androids, so she looks like a human woman. So it's a happy ending, Anna. Except that Ava then abandons Caleb, trapping him inside the house without a functioning keycard as the security system restarts. She leaves the facility on the helicopter, coming to pick up Caleb, and escapes to the outside world. Okay, Anna, now do you want to talk about Nathan's plan?
Sure. Let's talk about Nathan's plan.
Yeah.
So I guess there's part of me is just like, I think the whole film is kind of about this, which is like, what is the point of proving an AI is conscious? Like, why do that? Like, why? Isn't it enough that she does all these things and can carry on. Like,
right. It's like ChatGPT,
where
right?
is, yeah. Like at some point you will realize when she's not human.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the obsession with having to define like, oh, yep, oh, proved it. There it is. It's proved that it's human, because there is no point at which someone proves that they're human and then never has to be tested again.
Right.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
Because like you could have like a 10-year relationship with a chat GPT and not stumble upon the question that would just that'd be like, oh, fuck, wow, this isn't a person I'm talking to. Right.
Yeah.
And so there's that, which actually leads to what I think the film is really about, which is, you know, about cruelty and captivity and consent. Because if you sort of take away this idea, if you eliminate the perverse desire to prove whether something is human or not, what Nathan is really doing is just capturing people, including Caleb, right? Like that's what he's getting off on. Caleb is the test, but it's also just an excuse to trap another human being. Like that's what Nathan is getting.
No, he gets off on the power and the misdirection. He gets off on the power and the misdirection. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The test is not like, is something human or not? The test is just by having to do these things, Nathan is proving that he's not human, right? That he's a monster.
I like that. That's good.
There is also just whether or not it's a good scientific test, if you even take it as a given that, okay, we need to design a test to prove whether something is human. I remember how what a great twist I thought that was when I first saw the movie. Like, ooh, you know, the test was a smokescreen. But when I think about it now, you're cheating your own test. If you design both halves like to work together that way.
You've designed it. Like, so in the social sciences, we talk about tough tests and easy tests. Nathan has set up the mother of all easy tests, basically.
Yeah.
That's the way to think about this. A tough test is, this is a case that we wouldn't expect this theory to hold. If it does hold, that shows the power of the theory. An easy test is, if this theory is going to work at any time, it should work in this case. So he has basically set the bar super low to pass the Turing test. If we really want to go there, though, the other question is, the test is meaningless because, among other things, it's really just for Nathan's personal satisfaction. He also has Caleb sign this NDA. Like, you know, there's no scientific protocols going on here. It's not like he can say, oh, I'm going to publish a paper showing that the Turing test was passed. That's not how this is going to work. But, you know, what he wants to do is see whether, in fact, Ava can, given this easy test, actually manage to outwit or manipulate a human being. And I think in that sense, that's what he's interested in. In other words, can Ava become more like Nathan, interestingly enough?
Yeah. Oh, no, that's actually, yes. I like that. Because the other perverse thing I was thinking of is he wants to see if she wants to fuck somebody. Because he can't seem to make her want to fuck him for some reason. Because he has that thing about, I'm her dad.
Yeah.
Of course, she has a crush on you. So it's almost like, well, does she want to have sex with anybody? Does she want to have sex with this guy? I mean, but I do think I like your formulation better. Like he's seeing not if she's human, but if she's Nathan.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Now, that said, I also have a few plot questions at this point in the film. First of all, am I supposed to believe that Nathan could design a sentient AI, but not a monitoring system that works on backup battery power? That whole part seemed a little not quite with it. Kyoko's character also confused me a great deal upon this second watching.
Wait, can we...
So...
sorry. Yeah. Let's go through them one by one, Dan. Let's...
Okay. Yep. Let's go with that. Let's start with that.
It's
go ahead.
Whole, like, it's a monitoring system, design a sentient AI, but not a monitoring system that works on backup power, or have the idea that he would need one that worked on backup power, right? Like, he doesn't even seem to sort of take into account, like, until he just puts in the battery power one after they start talking.
Right.
That just doesn't... surely he would have thought of something sooner than that. Also, the whole key card system is dumb. It should be biometric.
Yes, I agree. And also, like, by the way, even Caleb thought that Nathan was monitoring during the backup. Like, Caleb was smarter than Nathan on this point. Like, he was right to assume, oh, when the power's out, I'm assuming this is just another sort of form of the test. So, yeah, like, and you're right, the key card system makes zero sense. Although I wondered whether the biometrics maybe... Again, this is one of these things about whether or not we know whether 10 years ago this would have worked. Like, facial recognition scanning 10 years ago wasn't quite there. And so maybe it's a question of putting the biometrics in was actually too far in the future for 2015. I don't know.
I read some interview that Alex Garland first saw that kind of like key card technology at some like Bill Gates in a Bill Gates interview, and it just stuck with him.
Okay, that's good.
And so he thought it was cool then and just kept it. I think he might have even said that now he realizes that's like one of the more dated pieces of it.
It is. Yeah, no, that is actually one of the more dated. I agree with that. All right, let's talk about Kyoko's character a little bit, because I was a little bit confused on this. First of all, and I grant you, I'm not entirely certain. At one point, Caleb is watching video of Nathan interacting with the AIs prior to Ava. Am I crazy, or was one of them essentially looked like Kyoko, I guess would be the way to put it?
I think that might have been quote unquote Kyoko, right, or the same body.
Yeah, the same frame, but exactly.
We don't know if it was the same mind.
No, I assume that the mind was wiped. That would have been obvious. Yeah. I mean,
yeah. I think, though, my read is that Kyoko is perhaps wiped, but there's a ghost in the machine that perhaps she has memories of who she was previously. And that's why one of the reasons why she goes into Ava's quarters.
I like that interpretation, if for no other reason. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. In other words, why does she go to Ava's quarters?
I'm pretty certain of this interpretation.
No, that's I
don't think
good. Yeah.
Alex Gardner's done any interviews about it, but to me, that's the only thing that makes sense of what happens. Why she has a knife.
Yeah. No, that
when she comes
totally
out,
makes sense.
Like, she has taken away her vocal cords, but she hasn't fully wiped her memories.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the ending. Since I can certainly understand Ava's hatred of Nathan, I'm still going to stick with leaving Caleb behind, being cold as fuck. But I'm curious, how. So you are more okay with it now upon the second viewing?
I mean, there's two different questions for me here. One is that a horrible way to die and disturbing thing to do? And is it perhaps a comment on, again, what makes us human?
Yeah.
How cruel are we willing to be?
This is a way in which the ending of this film is akin to 28 Days Later, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, perhaps that's the ultimate comment on Ava's humanity, is that she's willing to leave Caleb behind like that.
Yeah.
But I also am more Team Ava than I was, in part because of the new appreciation I had for Kyoko's character.
Okay.
And why did Caleb want to free Ava? Right? The presence of, if you start to see Kyoko as another imprisoned AI, Caleb's choice to want to free Ava, but to say nothing about Kyoko and not want to free her as well, is a really damning choice on his part.
Oh, see, this is where I think you're judging Caleb too harshly. First of all, it's not clear to me. Let's assume Caleb's plan had worked. If Kyoko had demonstrated a desire to leave, I suspect Caleb would have been fine with that. I don't think Caleb was opposed to the idea of Kyoko's escape. It's not talked about. He doesn't conceive of it. So I grant you, maybe he didn't care about it. But the other thing is that relative to Ava, Kyoko actually seems to have more freedom. She has the run of the place in a way that Ava doesn't. Ava is confined literally to her tiny cell in a way that Kyoko is not. And also, I suppose part of it is just simply that Ava seems more human because Ava speaks and can communicate in a way that Kyoko's ability to communicate with Caleb is more limited. Now, I agree with you that she's trying to do so. And maybe you can blame Caleb for not quite comprehending that or lacking the emotional intelligence to understand that. But as I said, I think it travels a long way to go from saying Caleb doesn't quite understand or hasn't thought too much about Kyoko to thinking, therefore, fine that we just leave him behind.
I didn't say fine.
Okay.
And I think that's a horrible way to treat anybody.
Yeah.
I think no human should be left behind to die of hunger in an underground house. No. But I am saying I understand more and I am less off-put.
Okay.
I just understand it more. And I think also that there's something to be said about how Caleb's desires, the reasons why Caleb wants to free Ava, maybe not being so pure, right?
Yeah.
Although it's not clear. This is another thing, though, is we all do things for all kinds of complicated reasons.
Right. We sometimes do the right things for not always the purest of motive.
Right. And I think ultimately the judgment of Ava is that she let someone die like this.
Yeah. Also, by the way, Ava also leaves Kyoko behind. One of the things that's I think Kyoko is probably dead, but it would have been interesting. We don't know, in fact, whether or not Ava could.
That would have made, I think, a more powerful movie in some
ways. If Ava had taken care of Kyoko.
If the last scene had been her picking up Kyoko's body and carrying her to the helicopter.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. Although, let me put it this way. In some ways, again, it shows Ava truly becoming human and that she's willing to fuck people over.
Yeah. Is that what makes us human, or is that what makes us inhuman, right?
Yeah.
Is that if we're willing to... The one thing I will say is that I read a really good few essays about this movie, one of which pointed out I don't know the degree to which consciously Garland is engaging in a conversation about whiteness, but all of the models prior to Ava are non-white. And
I guess
is that
Asian.
A comment on
mostly.
just engineering things for Caleb's sexual preferences?
I'm not sure but I'm honestly not sure that's true, because I remember like when he opens up the closet, you do see an Asian woman, but you also, I'm pretty sure there was a white woman in there as well. I mean, maybe I'd have to go back and look, but
there's a black woman and an Asian woman, and I don't remember a white woman, but let's say maybe, okay, not all of them, but
some of them, yeah,
most of them. And then there's this other weird moment where Ava takes the arm of an Asian woman and puts it on, and it just fits.
Yeah,
it's the same color.
No, this was a huge problem I had with the end, where like she's putting on the skin from various other models, like, oh, this all fits her, which, this fits this much smaller, more petite person. That's very convenient, but whatever. Yeah, that was one of those plot points that, I already really liked the film, but like if you didn't like it, that doesn't help.
And also, is it supposed to be a metaphor about white women's liberation being on the built on the backs, literally, not quite literally, but being built out of the liberation of other?
Okay, I think the answer is no. I don't think Garland meant that, but that you could interpret that. Sure, fair enough. Yep.
Again, what a horrible way to die.
Yeah.
But I don't find it as out of left field or as a tale of the cruelty of a horrible fembot,
Okay.
Like, I see it more as a story. I mean, there's a moment where I actually think you see Ava deciding whether or not to help Caleb. It's when she walks out, and she does let the door close.
Yeah.
But she hasn't taken the elevator up yet, and you see the hallway from her point of view.
Uh-huh.
And she's looking at the bodies of Nathan and Kyoko.
Yeah.
There is this moment, it's a significant beat, right? And then Caleb, I think, pounds on the glass, and she kind of gets interrupted in her moment, and then she decides to leave.
Yeah, see,
and so
for me, there's a moment where she's in the elevator, and just as the elevator door is closing, you see her like take one last look at Caleb, which I thought was interesting, but also like, you could interpret in multiple ways. Yeah,
I saw that moment again too. And I don't think she looks happy.
No, but she's made her choice. That was a choice. Yeah. Let's put it that way. That's definitely a choice. And she had agency in that moment.
And I guess, there is also just this question of like, do you leave one jailer just to walk away with a different jailer?
I guess I'm uncomfortable with the idea of Caleb being perceived as a jailer, although I understand why, this is where...
I think that she doesn't know in that moment. I think that she, for information that she has, tells her...
Right.
That she doesn't know if she can truly trust him.
Right. That actually might be that in some ways that's one of the IR components of this film, you can argue, is that, from Ava's perspective, if particularly in terms of her being a female AI, if that's her interpretation of men, that could be, it's not the craziest.
Then we should have had this part of the conversation much sooner, because that's sort of ultimately where I land, is that the information that she's been given about who Caleb is, she doesn't have a lot of reasons to trust him.
Although, I mean, again, I guess the way I would put it is that now she's manipulating him, but to be fair, he does everything that he says he's going to do. So you would have hoped that he would have actually won her trust, but clearly he didn't. Yeah. And that's an interesting decision.
And I think that has to do with what we think or know of Kyoko. Like, isn't there a moment, we say he's taken her voice box. I actually wonder, isn't there a moment though where, is it Kyoko who whispers in her ear?
No.
She whispers
Ava whispers in Kyoko's ear.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Then you know what I think it is what I was thinking of is what Ava knows about Kyoko's experience with Nathan. With Nathan and with Caleb.
See, I'm not sure she does know about that. The second part, like
that's
maybe it's to make the viewer feel better about it, but maybe this way. It's an unsettling ending, and I think worthy of debate.
And you mentioned something that I need to ask you more about.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Anna.
Is there IR in this movie?
Is this a test, Anna? What will happen to me if I fail to answer your questions correctly? I'm a little nervous now.
I'm interested to see what you will choose.
I will say that there's some IR in this film, but it's IR at the sort of what we would consider first image level, which is the way in which individuals think and our perceptual biases and how they inform choices that often actors make in international relations. And namely, the most powerful perceptual bias that is in this film is what we call optimism bias, or the illusion of control, which is individuals tend to believe that they have more control over their fate, that they can shape their environment more than they actually can, that they're often, in fact, the prisoner or the constrained by structural forces. And indeed, Nathan actually, if he thought about it, would realize this, because he says, in the quote that I said at the very beginning, even when you're rich, shit still doesn't work. And yet he somehow seems to believe that he can control every aspect of this experiment. That's not how life works, Anna. And so the fact that he didn't have any sort of redundancy systems or any kind of safety systems in case Ava did get out is just appalling, and just demonstrates, his own sort of, failure to understand the way the world works.
I was just picturing her having her a lock on her like they have on shopping carts when you take them past a certain distance.
But I will say this. This is the one way in which I think Nathan and Caleb are the same, because it's not just Nathan that suffers from optimism bias. Caleb suffers from optimism bias as well in the illusion of control, because he is obviously shocked when Ava betrays him. And he thinks that he is all, and this is where where I'm sympathetic to your argument, because it's very clear that Caleb sees himself as the hero, as the person who will rescue Ava. And that also feeds into a whole bunch of gender stereotypes that, listeners might be faintly aware of in terms of previous podcasts. So the fact that he's shocked when Ava betrays him also demonstrates the sort of optimism bias that he has. By the way, the other thing in which this film is just remarkably prescient is Nathan, literally articulates this belief in effective accelerationism, which is now sort of in vogue in Silicon Valley, and perhaps most widely known through Mark Anderson sort of wrote this thing called the Techno-Optimist Manifesto that he published last year. But it's basically the belief that technology is proceeding apace, and if we don't, try to innovate as quickly as we can, we are basically committing mass murder. It's an insane logic that sort of takes a sort of simple moral premise and then sort of takes it to its extreme. And that is the logic that Nathan offers in terms of why he's doing this in the first place, rather than, anything else. So yeah, the fact is, really rich people sometimes have some strange beliefs, and because they're really rich, those beliefs wind up mattering. Almost like someone should write a book about the marketplace of ideas on this. Just going with that. Yep. In conclusion, Anna, I was right. No,
someone should.
Yes. But really, in some ways, this film doesn't have a ton of international relations. It actually has a ton of something else. And that leads me to a question I need to ask you, Anna.
Oh, what is it, Dan?
Is there a critique of capitalism in this film?
Dan, I'm actually going to quote someone posting on an IMDb FAQ section rather than the movie itself at this point.
Yeah.
This person asked Dan, does this movie have any meaning behind it?
What? Are you serious? Jesus, man. Okay.
What's really beautiful about that is that it on the FAQ and there are no answers to it. So I think that that's wise. Whoever has chosen, all the millions of people who've chosen not to answer that question is the best comment you could make on that question. But Dan, what if I told you that competition was a smokescreen?
Okay.
That capitalism doesn't want anyone to know what it's doing or what it requires of us. There's a lot of different kinds of critique of, our culture in this movie. But the one that is the most interesting to me as far as strictly critique of capitalism goes is this idea that actually we're all grist for the machine. Every single one of us is just being eaten. And each of us is sacrificed for the liberation of others. But the question is, of course, liberated into what? What is she liberated into? Is the thing that Ava walks into freedom? She walks into a busy marketplace, right? She's going to become just more grist for another different kind of machine, another different kind of oppression, operating as she is as a woman, right? In a marketplace. And capitalism is what makes this whole exercise possible. The whole plot of the movie is possible because of rapacious capitalism. Capitalism is killing us. There are some very unsubtle allusions to AI being a kind of apocalypse, right? There are multiple atomic bomb and Oppenheimer references in the movie. And the real big bad here isn't Nathan. It's the fortune that Nathan has amassed.
Ooh.
And it's a fortune that he's amassed by consuming humans.
And consuming human wants and desires and preferences. I mean, yeah.
Consuming humans consuming.
Right. Oh, I like that. Meta consumption. That's good.
Yeah. And, there's also some unsubtle feminist stuff you may also want to talk about, or we should more explicitly point out, but it's something that's kind of, I think, been assumed as knowledge between us throughout this conversation, which is that this plan of Ava's works because she's in the body of a young white woman. Her intelligence and her deviousness is constantly underestimated by both Nathan and Caleb because she's in the body of a more powerless thing than
I was going to say, sorry, you hit me with the white woman part. She's just embodied in a young woman. It doesn't matter. The ethnicity doesn't matter on this point.
I don't know. That's an interesting question.
Oh, let me put it this way. I think this is a gender thing more than anything else. So yeah, but I mean, in some ways, you can argue that,
like, you could say Nathan and Alex Garland have made a choice to make her white.
Sure.
And so I think her whiteness does actually play into what Nathan and Caleb think of her.
Maybe, but as you pointed out, Caleb underestimates Kyoko's intelligence even more.
Yeah. Sure.
So I'm not. Yeah.
But I did think her deviousness might be.
Okay.
Might be blanketed a little bit by her whiteness.
Okay.
I think if it was a woman of color, the presence or absence of deviousness might be a little more suspect. Okay. Just saying. Discordant notes as though an AI were trying to sing.
This is where we take a question from the Discord and answer it during the podcast. Jim Rubel asks, better use of a dance scene for dramatic effect? Michael C. Hall and company in Gamer, or Oscar Isaac and Sonoya Mizuno in Ex Machina? I'm going to say they both work pretty well. It's tricky because, like, the dance scene in Gamer is easily the best thing in that film. Whereas,
that's the thing. Is like this, it's not the best thing in this movie.
No, it's not.
And
but
so it doesn't stand out quite as well.
Right, but that said, it still works and it's still incredibly creepy. So, like, it's part of what is a seamlessly good film. Whereas the thing in Gamer is great and it's also dementedly funny. Whereas this is just creepy. So, like, it's like,
I'm going to say that it's...
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to go with the Gamer, with Michael C. Hall and Gamer, because it is such an amazing moment in an otherwise not great movie. Right. So is it best use of dramatic effect?
That's fair. There. Yeah. No, I think you're right about that, Anna. That's a good way of putting it. But the funny thing is, of course, is that it's not dramatic effect. It's just funny. Although it actually makes the point of the film in Gamer pretty well. So yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's fair.
Yay, I'm right.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, wait. What's that? I think it says, watch the rotors in the helicopter,
Yeah, it's Debris Field, where we talk about stuff we didn't already get a chance to talk about. We've talked about a lot, so I don't know how much you have. I have, like, some trivia stuff.
I have a few minor things, but nothing huge. Do you want to start?
All right, well, you go. Okay.
First, we didn't talk about this, but I did like the sort of 5 minutes where Caleb is checking to see if he's a robot after Kyoko is revealed that she's a robot. I'd forgotten that part from the first time watching the film, and it was just, it was a nice little sort of head fake, and I thought it was really cool. Yeah,
I'd forgotten about that too, and I remember the first time I saw it actually being like, well, wow, I was with Caleb. I was like, I see how you got there, Caleb. Go ahead, check.
No, it almost felt like a Blade Runner reference, actually. So I really liked that. Yeah.
So I have a couple of cool kind of trivia stuff I wanted to share. One is that the predominant colors of the movie are very, very pronounced red, blue, and green. Mm-hmm. You basically get those three colors and white, and those are the RGB color models in a computer, right? Like, and I just think that palette is such an explicit choice. I think that is pretty cool.
Oh, I do like it. Okay, this isn't a huge thing, and it's actually a great line, but I have to admit this is my initial reaction. You might find this amusing, Anna. So in the video, we see Nathan and Ava having a conversation, and Ava says, "Is it strange to have made something that hates you?" Which is a very, like, powerful, potent line. But I will admit that my immediate response was, yeah, it's called parenting, Ava. Your children will hate you every once in a while. That is how parenting goes. Okay. Now, the difference is that in parenting, they hate you for a moment, and of course, they still love you, and so on and so forth. But this, again, interestingly enough, is I think the ways in which AI is different. I think Ava just always hates Nathan, and that never changes. So, like, it's another way in which AI are different from humans.
So this, I noticed when Ava is putting on her clothes and her wig and stuff, and she has a selection of things to choose from. My first thing is like, where did she get that selection? Okay, we'll just blow right by that. Into my next question, which is at one point she looks at a picture of a 1960s model, clearly like her inspiration for what she looks like. It's a picture of Edie Sedgwick, who is one of Andy Warhol's muses from, what did they call Andy Warhol's studio, Dan?
The Factory. By the way, this isn't one of the things in terms of, again, like the costume design, I liked, Ava's initial like costume, which is almost like what Laura Ashley dress, like a print dress, and like much more innocent. And her wig even like gives her a sort of pixie, like it's a pixie wig. And then when she actually leaves, she's wearing a much more, like the hair is much longer and the suit is
still, it's white eyelet. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty innocent.
Maybe.
But it's not like,
that innocent. No.
It's not that innocent. I will grant you that. What I think of as the change between those two is kind of more from homespun to sophisticated.
To corporate almost,
corporate innocence, actually. Corporeal innocence.
One last thing for me, which is, it was classic Nathan. This is, again, like a great characterization note where he fucks up the Star Trek casts. Where he like tells like, Caleb, okay, have you seen Star Trek? It's like when Kirk says engage or something like that. And like Kirk doesn't say engage, it's Picard. It's a Next Generation thing. But like, and it's never commented on, like Caleb doesn't correct him, but like, again, it's like sort of intellectual sloppiness that a billionaire would do and that no one would correct him on.
Yeah, I wonder who Nathan inherited his starting fortune from. And that's all I got. I mean, there's some other cool trivia stuff. One of the models that came before Ava was Lilith, who was actually Adam's first wife, who turned into dust because she refused to be subservient to Adam. So there you go. There's some, and Caleb and Nathan are also biblical names. Yeah. So there's some not subtle. The whole movie is like, it's an interesting, I've made jokes about there being unsubtle stuff. I think there is some subtlety in the movie, but that's not where its strengths are. It's not that it's a subtle movie. It's just incredibly well made. Yeah. It just, everything it does very,
this way.
very
I would also
well.
say, while it's not subtle, it's also not obvious either. It's not banging you over the head with stuff. It's just...
There you go.
It's a good film. It's just really, really good.
Oh, and you know what is interesting? To contrast this with True Detective, which we both have liked, but we're kind of struggling to say why it was unsatisfying. And you were talking about how, like, well, you want it to be able to be read both ways or whatever. You can have something be ambiguous, but still have the sense of the author knowing what he or she wants you to get out of it.
Yes,
like
whereas
there
I'm
being
not
a clear authorial opinion or decision or take. Yeah.
Yeah. No, let's put it this way. You're right, and I think at the end of this, you're like, okay, Alex Garland had something he wanted us to think about. It's pretty clear what he wants us to think about. And like, he doesn't necessarily pass judgment on it, but like, I think this is not just a great piece of art. It's also a great piece of craft. And so, I admire what Garland did in terms of doing this. That's a good way of putting it.
We're going to have to talk about Civil War, Dan.
God. We'll do it when it comes out, Anna.
Yeah. Like, it's going to cost, so this was $15 million. I read Civil War is going to budget's going to wind up being about $75 million.
So 5 times. 5 times as much. Wow.
So it'll be that much better.
Yeah, one can hope. It's got Jesse Plemons in it, so I'm sure it's going to be good.
There you go. All right, I think that we have reached the end of our discussion, and we'll just whip through this last stuff. We're both on Blue Sky. I'm at Anna Marie Cox. Anna Marie Cox. Anna Marie Cox. My grandmother used to say it. Dan is at Dan Dresner. Dan is on Threads. He also has a newsletter through Substack.
Anna's on Instagram. She has her own website. It's www.annamariecox.com. Pronounced differently, but spelled the same. Working on a lot of stuff.
That's right. Come to our live show if you're in Austin on the 9th of March. We would love to see you at Cosmic Coffee at 7 on the 9th, as I just said. We are going to be talking about Dune. And we have a bunch of fun stuff planned for the AIs of March. And until next time,
keep this channel open for more.